Hello, this is Mike Arrington. Today, and for the next several episodes, I'll be talking about building an exceptional business. So, whether you're starting a business, running a business, or fixing a business, you will want to know what I have to say. Now, you may be asking yourself, why would I listen to this guy? It's a good question. You should ask yourself that before you take anybody's advice. Let me give you a little background of my experience in business. First of all, I've spent 40 years in business. I was the president of Western Union North America, and I built their commercial segment. And while I was running Western Union North America, we were responsible for about $2 billion in sales. Also, as part of that experience, I did all the mergers and acquisitions globally. And we did about 3 acquisitions during that time as well. Once I left Western Union after 35 years, I then began another job as the president and CEO of Jackson Hewitt Tax Service. For those of you that are not familiar, Jackson Hewitt Tax Service was the number 2 tax preparer in the United States after H&R Block. My major accomplishments there were getting the Walmart distribution. We had about 1,000 locations within Walmart, and when I finished, we had over 2,000 locations. That was my experience in running public businesses, but what about my private experience? I've built my own business. For the last 14 years, I've been running a company called YourInvest/Hillside, which works on multifamily investments, single-family investments, lodging, and mortgages. And that business has been running for about the last 14 years. So that's my business experience. What about my personal experience? My personal experience is I was married for over 50 years. My wife is no longer with us, but I have 5 children and 9 grandchildren. And the thing I like to say is that I'm a Christian businessman. A lot of people don't want to say that as part of their introduction, but I am a Christian businessman, and I want to just challenge you in these few verses that are life verses for me to understand why I am. In Revelations 3, 7, and 8, it says, "Pray to the God who can open doors no man can close and close doors no man can open." So why wouldn't you want the God of the universe being in a situation where you invited him in to open doors that you didn't see or maybe couldn't go through, or close doors that you didn't want to go through? So I've always made that one of my life verses. Another life verse for me is 2 Timothy 1:7. "The Lord has not given us the spirit of fear, but of courage and sound mind." And if you're in business, you need all the courage you can muster. And I always ask God to give me that kind of courage when I was in any business situation. The last one, people ask me from time to time, well, how can you be successful? You've had a certain degree of success in your life. Why is that? Well, Joshua 1:8 says this. This is the command that God was giving to a young Joshua as he was getting ready to go into the promised land. It said this. He said this, "Keep this book of law on your lips and meditate on it day and night and do everything written in it, and you will be prosperous and successful." So I guess I would have to say, as we go into these series of various things about business and how to run a business and how to fix a business and so on, I would leave you with those 3 verses because that's really how I've lived my life. So what are we going to talk about over the next several episodes? Well, there's going to be lots of interesting things that we discuss. The first thing we're going to talk about is the phases of business. People don't think much about it, but each of the businesses that you run or are associated with have a phase of operation. They have a startup phase. They have a situation where you are building a business, and this is really called the ideation or startup phase of the business. The next is the pioneering or the test market phase of your business. We're going to talk at length about each one of these. The next is the infrastructure, where you begin to see that maybe this business that you've thought about or you're trying to create, or this new channel of distribution, and I'll talk about some of those that I've been involved in, is beginning to get some traction in the marketplace. So what do you need to do next in order to get it to the next phase? And then once you get past the initial startup phase, now you begin to get into what is called the steady state. And this is where some businesses get in trouble. They began to get very comfortable and want to stay in that steady state and want to just milk the business for profit and not grow into other products or other areas where they could, in fact, continue to build their business long term. And then finally, there is a place in business where you don't want to be. It's called the bureaucracy stage. And that is the place where you get close to what I call the line of death in a business. And that's where your business begins to deteriorate, where the competition or the technology or whatever it is in your area of market begins to erode your share of market. So instead of being the number one player, you become the number two player and the number three player and so on. And you begin to lose your market share over time. And that's not where you want to be. So we're going to talk about each one of these phases in this episode, and we're going to tell you how to avoid those areas that you don't want to be in order to be in the bureaucracy stage. So let's start with the ideation stage. When I started looking at various companies that were creative, that were built around creative process, there's a company in the United States called the 3M Company, worldwide operation. 3M, when I went to 3M to learn what they were doing, what was their secret sauce, if you will, I talked with their guy who was in charge of product development. And 3M had several things going for it in that area. When I talked to that gentleman, he said part of the way 3M builds this mindset of creativity and building new products is it's built into the DNA of our organization. And I said, well, tell me more about that. He said, we have skunk works. These are areas where somebody will come up with an idea and we think it may have some legs for the future. And so what we'll do is we'll give them some money and some resources, and we'll say, go off in this little area and create a skunk works, and you can begin to develop this idea. And if you begin to get it to the point where it gets traction, we may give you more resources and more people. And if you get to the point where it becomes a $50 million a year potential business, then the corporation will install people from the corporate level to help you build this business and get it off the ground. So what he told me in that discussion was that his organization, and I will tell you this is necessary in your organization in the ideation stage, you need to have people that are focused on creating and building new ideas for your business. Don't leave it to chance. Don't let your competitors create the next idea. Don't sit there relying on one product when in fact your portfolio should contain many ways to gain revenue for your corporation. 3M figured that out, and many, many years ago, I'll give you one example. There was a guy that was working on a tape project, and he began to think, gee, we're using this tape to mark different things. I wonder if we could create something, and you've seen this in the marketplace, the stick-it notes, where people have a tape-like product on the back of the note, and they stick it on various things. And so it's a reminder, if you will. And that became a very big business for them because they used somebody that was working in their adhesive division that was working on a tape to create an idea called a sticky note. And it was very successful for them. So that's just one idea of how things start in the ideation phase. Normally what happens is that you'll begin to see somebody in the marketplace. Maybe it's your customer that has a new technology that you weren't aware of. Maybe it's your competitor that you may need to take a closer look at that's coming up with a new technology, a new way, a new mousetrap, if you will. You need to be aware, and you need to have people in your staff and in your organization that are focused on ideation and startup. And you're saying, well, I've been in business for 30 years, so what? You need to have people that are focusing on where your business will be going in the next generation of your product and the next generation of the products that may not exist today. And if you don't have focus on that today, I guarantee you will be working to play catch up with a competitor who comes up with that idea. I told people in my organization that there was always somebody out there that had a silver bullet with your name on it. And you should be waking up every morning thinking, well, I wonder where the silver bullet is coming from, because somebody's getting ready to load it in their competitive gun and fire at your business and destroy your business because you weren't smart enough to figure it out first. Let me give you a couple of examples. There was a company in the United States called Blockbuster. Blockbuster used to rent tapes back then for VHS players. The technology was changing, and Blockbuster didn't get on board and say, gee, I wonder where we should go and lead this marketplace. I wonder if we should create online streaming. As the internet services got better and bigger and more powerful, there was a company who is very well known today around the world called Netflix. Netflix created streaming services which basically created the market and moved it in a different direction. There's a gentleman that you can read about called Andy Grove. Andy Grove was a smart guy. He was a courageous guy, and I'll talk about that later as we get into leadership principles. But he began to see what they call an inflection point in the chip-making business. And if you know anything about the chip-making business, NVIDIA owns a share of the market now, which is which is AI-based, and that's new. But Andy saw way back then that the market was changing in a variety of ways. And this inflection point in his business was a point where he began to look and say, what do we need to do differently as we go forward? Now, the courage and leadership comes in when you say, well, I think we should take our business in a different direction. When the board is saying, wait a minute, we're making a lot of money in this area, and why do we want to go in a different direction? Well, Andy Grove decided he would spend the multiple $1 million that he needed to spend in order to create new machinery to create a new kind of chip. And if you followed that story, you know that Andy was right. The inflection point was going in the direction he chose for his company. And for a while, he had a major competitive advantage over his competitors in that segment of the market. Let me give you another area. IBM, Big Blue, well-known worldwide company. IBM was in the mainframe business. IBM spent a lot of time making great mainframes and creating ways to build better mainframes. And somebody in a little skunk work down in Florida, I believe, at the time came up to Armonk, which is where they were headquartered, and said, hey, you know, there's this thing called PCs that's really starting to get some traction in our marketplace. Now, that was not a very popular thing for a company that built mainframes. Wait a minute. So you're telling me, sir, that this thing called a PC will, in fact, compute on your desktop? Uh-huh. And IBM, of course, was not willing to listen to that because they were building mainframes and making a lot of great business and making a lot of great profit on mainframes. And so this idea languished for quite a while. IBM was not the leader in that area. IBM today is obviously a force in that marketplace, but back then there was a company called Compaq Computer that was the leader, and another company called Digital Equipment that was the leader in that small to mid-size computer, because they were the ones that saw the inflection point in the marketplace and they began to build products to serve that marketplace. IBM was late to the game. They finally got in, and because they're IBM and they have a lot of resources, they caught up. But I'm telling you that this ideation phase and this startup phase of your business is very important. And as I said before, don't think because you are the owner of the number one position in a marketplace that you'll always have that position. There are always people out there that are willing to look at ways to knock you off. And I always told people, if you're in number one, it's a good place to be. It says you have a good market share, but there's always somebody looking to knock you off your perch in that phase of the business. So that's basically the ideation part of the business. Let me just give you a couple of ways that you can build on that phase of your business. As I said before, create a group of people within your company that's what they do. They focus on creating new products. Product development is usually the term that's given to that area, but spend time there because that's where your new products will come from. People should be looking all the time. You should create in your market, create in your company the ability for anybody to create a good idea. The best way for people to come up with new ideas is for those people that are close to the marketplace. For example, marketing people, salespeople that are out knocking on doors, talking to customers, may come across a technology which is something that they are working on that you need to know about. And if you have people that are encouraged and incented to bring those ideas up to the product development group, that's where you're going to get your new products. That's probably where you're going to get most of your new ideas and your new products. Look at competitors. What are they doing? What are they doing differently than you might be doing? Sometimes in Western Union's case, we saw a competitor that was doing something different and better than we were. And what we did was we acquired that competitor because we knew, being a large company, it might take us 2 or 3 years to get that product to market. And they already had a version of the product which we could put our brand on and improve, which would get us to the market more quickly. I'll give you another example of ideation and creativity. A gentleman that I worked with, that I consulted with, that was creating a product that goes on the inside of paper cups. It was a product that was biodegradable. And he came to me and he said, hey, I'm looking to sell this product to all the major paper companies. And I said, well, that's great. How are you going to do that? He said, well, there's only about 8 of them in the United States, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock on their door, and I'm going to tell them I've got this greatest product since sliced bread. It's a diatomaceous earth-based product, and many times a lot of companies, big companies that use cups, are using a plastic-based interior of that cup. which obviously holds the liquid inside without spilling out through the paper product of that cup. And I said, okay, that's great. That's wonderful. How are you going to reach these companies? And he had a plan in place. And I said, well, that's one way to go to market. That's one way to get your customers. But the idea is so good. Why don't you go to the end user? Why don't you go to the Starbucks of the world and those folks that can drive that more quickly than you going and knocking on the door? Well, he didn't take the good advice I gave him. He started going to Weyerhaeuser and Georgia Pacific and all these major paper suppliers. And he said, hey, we've got this great new idea. It's called diatomaceous earth. It wasn't called that. That wasn't the brand name. But it was diatomaceous earth on the inside of the cup that will hold liquid, and it's very biodegradable, which they were all very interested in. And so what he did is he sold his product to the large players in the marketplace. Now, he wasn't my client at that point, and he didn't go back and say to those folks, okay, I'm going to sell you this product, which is going to revolutionize the marketplace. It's an inflection point in this market. And what I want you to do is to sell the heck out of it. Well, what they did is they bought the product, they put it on the shelf since he didn't have any requirements for a certain amount of sales per year in those contracts, and he began to see that his product was now being recreated by the people that had licensed the product, the Georgia Pacifics, the Weyerhaeusers, so on, of the world. And he came back to me and he said, hey, what do I need to do? I said, well, you need to go to the Starbucks of the world, and you need to tell Starbucks, hey, listen, there's a product that your supplier has that is necessary for me in order to create this biodegradable product, which I want in my coffee cups, because Starbucks is very concerned about that. And you need to make sure that they're using that product to create the cups that I use at Starbucks. And he went back, and that, again, was a successful strategy for him because he had gone in with a new idea, great idea, but he'd gone about the wrong way of selling it. And again, we're going to talk about how do you go to market? What's the best way to go to market? So again, let me just reiterate a little bit and summarize what I've said about the ideation phase of the business. First of all, you need to have people in your organization that are focused on ideation and new product development. If you don't have that today, it's only a matter of time before your business will fail. So get some people. If you have a small company, get some people that are focused on that's all they do. When they wake up in the morning, what they're trying to do is figure out what the next generation of your product looks like, what the competitors are doing, what the competitive landscape looks like in general, and how to create a product which is successful no matter what. And that will continue to create this ongoing cycle of, hey, I've got the next generation of my product, and brand X doesn't have it. So today we're going to finish with that. I'm excited about being able to talk with you about the next several phases of how businesses work. But that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening in. My name again is Mike Yarrington. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Building an Exceptional Business.